Keanu Reeves sat alone in his small trailer on the movie set, looking out at the clouds rolling across the gray sky. The rain tapped lightly on the roof, creating a soft rhythm that matched the storm brewing inside his heart. Just hours earlier, he had finished filming a difficult scene with Mel Gibson, a scene that touched a deep place in his soul, but now something heavier weighed on his mind. He thought back to the conversation he had overheard that morning. Two crew members standing by the coffee truck, whispering about faith. They spoke about God, about Jesus, about how people lose hope in a world so filled with darkness. Keanu could not help but listen. It made him think about his own struggles, his loneliness, and the simple truth he often felt but rarely spoke aloud, that faith for him was like a light in the darkest moments. Mel Gibson, known for his passion and his own journey of faith, had noticed Keanu's quiet mood on set. During a break, Mel walked over, holding 2 cups of warm tea. He sat down next to Keanu, his eyes searching. "You all right, mate?" Mel asked softly, handing him a cup. Keanu took the tea, staring at the steam. He shrugged, just thinking about what Mel pressed, his voice gentle but firm. Keanu took a slow sip. The warmth spread through him, but it did not melt the cold knot in his chest. About how people look for hope, about how we get so lost, and about what Jesus really meant for people like us, people who are broken. Mel leaned back, surprised by the honesty in Keanu's tone. He had seen many actors speak about faith, but there was something raw in Keanu's words, something real. Keanu continued, his voice low. "You know, I lost so much in my life. My dad left when I was young. I lost my best friend. I lost the woman I loved. Sometimes I wonder how I am still standing here. I don't go to church every Sunday. I don't quote scripture like a preacher, but I feel him. I feel him when I hold the door for someone. I feel him when I forgive someone who hurt me. I feel him when I choose kindness instead of anger." Mel listened, his eyes growing misty. He knew Keanu had faced tragedies, but hearing him speak of Jesus in such simple words touched him deeply. "People think believing is about being perfect," Keanu said, his voice steady now. "But it's not. It's about understanding that we are not perfect. It's about knowing that we fall, but He lifts us up. It's about knowing that when we feel alone, He is there, even in the silence." Mel wiped at his eyes, embarrassed. "That's beautiful, Keanu. That's really beautiful." Keanu looked at him and smiled, a sad but peaceful smile. "I'm not trying to preach. I just wish more people knew that it's okay to be broken, that it's okay to have questions. Jesus wasn't just for the righteous. He was for the lost, the rejected, the ones who feel like they don't belong. I think that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me kind, even when the world is not kind to me." Mel reached over and squeezed his shoulder. "Thank you for saying that. You have no idea how much I needed to hear it." Keanu looked away, his eyes glistening as he watched the rain run down the window. Outside, the world felt cold, but inside that small trailer, 2 men sat together, sharing warmth and truth. They were to people who had been broken, to people who found hope in the simple idea that love, real love, forgives, heals, and never leaves. As they sat there, neither spoke for a long time. Words were not needed. The silence was holy, filled with something greater than either of them. And when Keanu finally stood to go back to set, Mel looked at him with a new respect, a deeper connection that only those who share their faith so honestly can feel. Keanu stepped into the rain, his face lifted to the gray sky. He felt the drops on his skin, and for a moment, he felt the presence of something bigger, something that reminded him that kindness still mattered. The world would keep breaking people, but he would keep choosing to love anyway, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough to keep the light alive. The next morning, Keanu woke up before the sun. He sat at the small table in his rented apartment, a cup of black coffee warming his hands. The words he had shared with Mel still echoed inside him, like a gentle whisper that refused to fade. He wondered if he had said too much, if maybe he had crossed a line by opening up that part of his soul. But deep down, he knew it was the truth he needed to share. As he sipped his coffee, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Mel. It read, "Thank you again for yesterday. You inspired me to call my son. We talked for hours. I haven't done that in years. Keanu closed his eyes and let out a long breath. He felt a small smile tug at his lips. Sometimes, all it took was one honest conversation to crack open a heart that had been shut for too long. He finished his coffee, grabbed his jacket, and stepped out into the cool morning air. On his way to set, he stopped at a small diner near the studio. It was an old place, walls covered in faded photos, the smell of pancakes and bacon wrapping around him like a warm blanket. He ordered a simple breakfast and sat by the window, watching people hurry by outside. A young waitress with tired eyes brought him his food. She smiled politely, but kept glancing at the clock on the wall. Long day ahead? Keanu asked gently. She shrugged. Double shift, rent is due. She tried to laugh, but the sound cracked. Sorry, I shouldn't complain. Keanu shook his head. No, it's okay. Sometimes we need to let it out. She looked at him then. Really looked. You're Keanu Reeves, aren't you? He nodded, almost shyly. My mom loved you, she said, her eyes softening. She used to say you were the only actor who felt real. She passed away last year. Keanu felt a pinch in his chest. He reached out, careful not to make her uncomfortable, and touched her hand lightly. I'm sorry for your loss. I know how that feels. Her eyes filled with tears. She quickly wiped away with the back of her hand. Thank you. I try to keep going, you know. He nodded. That's all any of us can do. He paused, then added, my mother told me once that when life feels too heavy, you carry it one step at a time. You don't have to lift the whole weight all at once. She laughed softly, surprised by how comforting his words were. Thank you. I needed that. When she brought in the bill, Keanu took out $100 bill and slipped it under the plate. Then he added another, then another, until the tip was almost as much as her rent. When she returned to clear the table, she froze. Sir, I can't take this. This is too much. Keanu stood up, buttoning his jacket. No, it's not. My mom would want me to help someone who reminds me of her strength. And you do. Keep going. Keep taking it one step at a time. Before she could say more, he was gone, walking back into the chill of the morning. Behind him, the young woman pressed a hand to her mouth, the kindness of a stranger breaking through her exhaustion like sunlight through heavy clouds. On set, Keanu felt lighter. He found Mel waiting near the lights, a Bible in his hand. Mel grinned when he saw him. Guess what I did this morning? I went to church. First time in a long time. Keanu laughed. How did it feel? Strange, but good, Mel said. He opened the Bible and pointed at a passage. Listen to this. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. That's you, Keanu. You're a peacemaker. Keanu looked down, embarrassed. I don't know about that. I just try to be kind. The world can be so cold. Maybe kindness is the only thing that can warm it up again. Mel closed the Bible and put a hand on his shoulder. You know, you should share this with more people, not just me. People look up to you. They need to hear that being broken is okay, that they are loved anyway. Keanu thought about that. As the cameras rolled, he thought about the waitress, the crew, the people who would watch this movie and see only the characters, but never know the heart behind the man playing them. That night, as the day's work ended, he went back to his apartment and sat down with a notebook. He began to write. Words poured out of him, simple words about forgiveness, about love, about how faith is not just a church on Sunday, but every small act of mercy we choose. When it would be easier to turn away, he did not know what he would do with these words yet, but he knew one thing: the world needed more light, and maybe, just maybe, his voice could help carry it. Days passed, but Keanu could not stop thinking about the young waitress. Her eyes reminded him so much of his mother's, full of quiet pain, but also a strength that refused to break. Each night after filming, he sat at his table, writing page after page in his notebook. He wrote about his own struggles, about losing people he loved, about how he still found hope in the smallest things, a warm smile, a stranger's kindness, a sunrise after a long night. One night after another long shoot with Mel, Keanu found himself alone on the dark studio lot. The big lights were off, and only the soft hum of a distant generator broke the silence. He pulled his coat tighter around him and walked toward the back gate. There, leaning against the fence, he saw an older man wrapped in a thin blanket. The man's face was tired, eyes dull, clothes dirty from sleeping outside. Keanu stopped. He knew he could have walked on. Many people would have. But he remembered the words he had written just hours before. Kindness is never wasted. He stepped closer. Hey, are you okay? The old man looked up, startled. Yeah, I'm fine. Just resting. His voice cracked from thirst. Keanu sat down next to him on the cold ground. My name is Keanu. What's yours? The man laughed. Bitterly, nobody calls me by my name anymore. They just call me Old Joe. Keanu held out his hand. Nice to meet you, Joe. Joe hesitated, then shook his hand. It was rough and cold, but the simple touch seemed to bring him back to life a little. How long have you been out here? Keanu asked. Joe shrugged. Years. Lost my wife, lost my job, lost my place. I guess I just got used to people not seeing me anymore. Keanu felt that knot in his chest again, the one that always came when he saw how cruel the world could be to those who had so little. He reached into his pocket and pulled out some bills. But Joe shook his head. I don't need your money, Mr. Movie Star. I just needed someone to talk to for a bit, someone to see me. Keanu put the money away. All right, then let's talk. They sat there under the flickering streetlight. Joe told him about the house he used to have, the garden his wife loved, the nights they would sit on the porch listening to the crickets. His eyes shone as he remembered. I still talk to her, you know, Joe said, voice trembling. Sometimes. I feel like she's near, like she's telling me to hold on. Keanu nodded, feeling a tear slip down his own cheek. I think she is near. I think love never really leaves us. Joe looked at him, surprised. You really believe that? I do, Keanu said softly. I lost my girl too. I think about her every day. Sometimes when life feels too heavy, I imagine she's sitting right beside me, reminding me that I'm not alone. Joe's shoulders shook as he wiped his eyes with the edge of his blanket. You're a good man, Keanu. I see you in those movies, always playing heroes. I didn't know you were one in real life too. Keanu smiled. Embarrassed, I'm no hero. I'm just trying to do what I wish someone would do for me if I was sitting here alone. Before he left, Keanu asked Joe if he wanted a warm place to stay for the night. Joe refused. Too proud, but he let Keanu bring him food and a fresh blanket. From his car, they sat together a little longer, the city quiet around them. When Keanu finally stood up to leave, Joe grabbed his hand and held it tight. God bless you, son. You gave me hope tonight. Walking away, Keanu felt a strange peace. He knew he could not fix Joe's life in one night, but maybe showing him that someone cared was enough to keep him going for one more day. The next morning, Keanu told Mel about Joe. Mel listened carefully, eyes wide with respect. You really sat with him all night? Mel asked. Keanu nodded. He reminded me that sometimes people don't need saving. They just need to be seen, to be heard. That's what Jesus did, didn't he? He sat with people no one else would sit with. He made them feel seen. Mel grinned. You really should speak about this more. People think of you as an actor, but they don't know your heart. Maybe you should share it. Write that book. Talk about this in interviews. People are hungry for this kind of hope, Keanu. Keanu looked away, unsure. Maybe. I just don't want it to feel fake. I want it to feel like sitting with Joe under that streetlight. Honest, real. Then make it real, Mel said. Speak from the heart. People will feel it. That night, Keanu sat at his table again. He opened his notebook and wrote down Joe's name, the waitress's name. Every small moment that reminded him that the world was still full of good hearts, waiting to be lifted. He wrote about how Jesus taught him to keep loving, even when the world felt so cold. He still did not know where these pages would go, but deep down, he started to believe that maybe they would find their way into hands that needed them most. The next day, Keanu woke up before the sun again. He sat in the small kitchen of his apartment, pouring himself a cup of tea this time instead of coffee. He looked at the stack of notebooks on the table, pages filled with thoughts about kindness, loss, faith, and second chances. His phone buzzed with messages and missed calls, interviews, meetings, dinner invitations, all the things that came with his fame. But for the first time in a long time, Keanu felt like his real work was not the next film or the next press event. It was these words, these stories, this hope he was quietly collecting. When he arrived on set, Mel Gibson was already there. Mel had that look in his eyes again, the one that told Keanu something had stirred his heart. "Keanu," Mel said as soon as he saw him last night, "I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what you said about Joe, about how we should see people. I did something I haven't done in years." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "What did you do?" "I called my brother," Mel said, his voice breaking a little. "We haven't spoken in over a decade. We argued over stupid things, but I called him. We talked for hours. I told him I loved him. You did that, Keanu. You reminded me of what matters." Keanu felt a warmth in his chest. It felt like a small flame was growing inside him, a flame that wanted to reach out and touch every cold place in people's hearts. Later that afternoon, they were filming a heavy scene. It was a moment of betrayal in the story. Mel's character turned on Keanu's. Between takes, the atmosphere was tense. The crew could feel the weight of the scene, and the air was thick with stress. During a break, Keanu walked over to a young cameraman sitting alone on a crate, head in his hands. "You okay?" Keanu asked. The young man looked up, eyes red. "Yeah, just having a bad day. My dad's in the hospital. I'm trying to focus on work, but..." He trailed off. Keanu sat next to him, ignoring the cold metal pressing into his back. "You wanted to tell me about him." So the young man did. He talked about how his dad used to wake him up early on Sundays to play catch, how they would make pancakes together when his mom worked the night shift, how his dad always told him, "Do good, even when nobody's watching." Keanu listened, really listened. When the young man finished, he wiped his eyes and looked at Keanu. "Thanks for listening." "You didn't have to." Keanu smiled. "No, I did. You're not alone, okay? You're loved by your dad, by the people who care about you. Don't forget that." The young man nodded, his shoulders lighter. When they went back to set, he worked with a new calm, his focus clearer than before. Later that evening, Keanu found a quiet corner on the lot. He pulled out his phone and did something he had not done in years. He called his sister, Kim. She answered on the third ring, her voice soft but bright. "Keanu, wow, it's been a while since you called me at this hour. Is everything okay?" He could hear the surprise in her voice. Guilt pricked at him for not staying as close as he should have. "Yeah," he said, swallowing hard. I wanted to tell you I love you, and I'm proud of you. I know we don't talk about faith much, but you're one of the reasons I still believe people are good." Kim laughed through tears. "You're making me cry, dummy. I love you too. You always know when I need to hear it most." After they hung up, Keanu leaned back against the wall, staring up at the stars blinking through the city haze. He thought about how easy it was to drift apart, to let work, pride, or fear build walls between hearts that once held each other close. He knew he could not change the world overnight. He could not heal every wound or fix every broken bond. But maybe his words could. Maybe, one person at a time, the hope he carried in his notebook could remind people to forgive, to reach out, to say the things that mattered before it was too late. A few days later, he found Mel waiting for him again with an idea. "Keanu, hear me out," Mel said, voice buzzing with excitement. "What if you shared your story, the way you really see faith, love, and kindness, not in a movie, but for real, a small talk, a video. Let people hear you, no scripts, just you." Keanu hesitated. The thought made his stomach twist. He had always kept his private thoughts hidden, afraid they might be misunderstood. But he also knew what one true word could do. He had seen it in Mel's eyes, in the waitress's tears, in Joe's rough hand gripping his. "Okay," he said quietly, "but only if it's honest. No fancy stage. Just me, talking." "Done," Mel said. "I'll help you. People need this, Keanu. They need to know the man behind the screen is just like them, broken, hopeful, and trying to love anyway." Keanu nodded. That night, back in his apartment, He sat under a single lamp, notebook open. He started to write what he would say, words about Jesus, about brokenness, about the simple acts of kindness that keep the light alive when the world feels so dark. The night before Keanu was supposed to film his small talk video with Mel, he could not sleep. He lay on his couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the city sounds drifting in through the half-open window. His mind kept spinning. What if people thought he was pretending? What if they mocked him for talking about Jesus, about kindness, about forgiveness? He had spent his whole life protecting his quiet side, the part of him that hurt and healed in silence. Now he was about to open that door to the whole world. He got up and walked to the kitchen. He made tea, then stood by the window, watching the lights of cars moving below like tiny fireflies. He thought about Joe, the homeless man, and the waitress. At the diner, he thought about the young cameraman who just needed someone to listen. He thought about his own sister, how her voice had reminded him that love could outlast distance. He picked up his notebook again. He read the words he had written, simple words about how Jesus did not come for the perfect, but for the ones who felt lost and unseen. He remembered sitting in church when he was a boy, his mother holding his small hand. He did not remember the sermons much, but he remembered the way her eyes glowed when she sang hymns. She had been his first lesson in faith, not with big speeches, but with small, honest acts of kindness. He smiled to himself. Maybe that was enough. Maybe his words did not need to be perfect. They just needed to be real. The next morning, he arrived at the small studio Mel had set up. It was nothing fancy, just a plain chair, a soft light, and a camera. Mel was there, adjusting the lens, fussing with the cords. "You ready?" Mel asked, giving him an encouraging pat on the back. Keanu laughed nervously. "As ready as I'll ever be." He sat down in the chair. The light felt warm on his face. For a moment, he just sat there, breathing. He looked straight into the lens, imagining Joe, the waitress, the young cameraman, and anyone else who might be sitting alone in the dark, waiting for a sign that they were not forgotten. When the camera light blinked red, Keanu took a deep breath and began. "Hello, my name is Keanu. You know me from movies, but that's not what I want to talk about today." He paused, searching for the right words, his hands trembling slightly in his lap. "I want to talk about something real. I want to talk about how life breaks us. I know you probably see me and think I have it all, but I've lost people I loved more than anything. I've sat alone in rooms, feeling like the darkness would swallow me. I've felt like giving up, but I didn't, because there was always something that kept me here, love." He talked about his mother's quiet faith, about sitting next to Joe under a cold streetlight, about giving the waitress hope she did not know she needed. He spoke about how Jesus never promised we would not feel pain, but he did promise we would never be alone in it. "Kindness is not weakness," Keanu said, his eyes steady. "It's the strongest thing we can offer each other. You never know what your small act of love might do for someone else. You might be the reason they get through another day." He paused again. Mel watched from behind the camera, tears in his eyes. "If you feel alone, please know you're not. If you feel broken, please know you're not beyond fixing. If you feel unseen, please know that someone sees you, and that someone is bigger than any of us. I believe that with all my heart." When he finished, he looked down at his hands, surprised by how steady they had become. Mel stepped forward and wrapped him in a hug. "You did it, brother," Mel whispered. "You spoke your truth. People will feel this." Keanu sat back in the chair, a tired smile spreading across his face. He felt like he had just set down a heavy burden he had carried for years. They edited the video that same night, keeping it raw and simple. No fancy music, no dramatic cuts, just Keanu, his honest words, and the quiet hope that somewhere, someone would hear them and feel less alone. When they uploaded it, Keanu did not check the comments right away. He knew people would have opinions, but he also knew that the ones who needed to hear it would hear it, and that was enough for him. A few days later, as he sat in the same diner where he had met the young waitress, his phone buzzed again. It was a message from her. "Mr. Reeves, I saw your video. Thank you. I'm applying for college next week. You gave me the courage to believe I deserve better." He put his phone down, fighting the tears that stung his eyes. Sometimes, he thought, one honest word could echo louder than any film ever could. Weeks passed after Keanu's video went out into the world. It spread quietly at first, shared by a few fans who stumbled on it late at night when they were alone and hurting and looking for something real. Then, like a small flame in the dark, it began to grow. People passed it to friends who needed hope, to family members who needed forgiveness, to strangers who needed to feel seen. Keanu did not watch the view count climb. He did not need to. He saw the proof in small things, handwritten letters that arrived at his trailer, messages from people he would never meet. Some told him they had lost their faith, but his words made them wonder if maybe it was still there, buried under all the pain. Others said they forgave someone they had not spoken to in years. One letter came from Joe, the old man he sat with, behind the studio gate. Joe had found a small shelter after Keanu's visit. He wrote that he had reconnected with his daughter after 20 years. They were having coffee every Sunday now. Joe's words were shaky, but at the end, he had written, "You saw me when I felt invisible. You reminded me that Jesus still sees me." Keanu folded that letter and kept it in his wallet. He carried it everywhere, a reminder that a single, honest moment could turn a life around. One afternoon, Mel Gibson invited Keanu to his house for dinner. It was just the two of them sitting on the porch, the sun sinking low behind the hills. They talked about old movies, about the hard days, about the quiet ways faith stitched people back together. "Do you regret it?" Mel asked, looking at him with that searching gaze. "Sharing your heart like that?" Keanu shook his head slowly. "No. I think I've spent so much of my life trying to be quiet about what I really believe. I thought it was safer to keep it hidden. But all that did was keep the light small. Maybe the world doesn't need perfect people. Maybe it needs honest ones." Mel raised his glass in a small toast, to honesty, to broken people loving each other back to life. They laughed, clinking their glasses together. In that simple moment, Keanu felt something lift inside him, a burden he had carried for years, cracked open by kindness and faith. The next day, Keanu went for a walk through the city. He did not wear a hat or sunglasses to hide himself. He wanted to see the world with clear eyes. At a street corner, he saw the young waitress again. She looked different this time. Standing tall, a folder of college forms in her hand, a smile so bright it seemed to push the gray city back. "Hey," she called out when she saw him. She ran up and hugged him, surprising them both. "I did it. I got into nursing school. I start next month." Keanu smiled, his eyes shining. "I'm proud of you. You did this for me," she said. "Your words made me believe I could change my life. I just wanted you to know that." "No," Keanu said softly. "You did it for yourself. I just reminded you that you could." They said goodbye, and as he walked away, Keanu felt tears slip down his cheeks. Not from sadness, but from the simple, quiet joy that comes when you see the seeds you planted growing into hope for someone else. That night, he sat with his notebook one last time. He wrote about the waitress, about Joe, about Mel and his brother, about the small ways kindness ripples out, touching lives he would never know. When he closed the notebook, he knew he was not finished. He would keep living this message, not just speaking it once. Every film set, every stranger at a diner, every person sitting alone on a street, he would keep seeing them, keep reminding them they were not invisible, because that, to him, was what Jesus really wanted. Not perfect followers, but people who loved with open hearts, who forgave easily, who reached out when the world turned cold. Keanu turned off the light, the city outside his window buzzing with life. He whispered a small prayer for all the broken people still waiting for someone to see them, and he promised himself that as long as he was here, he would keep being that someone.